Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest on the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, so today I have Ujwal Arkalgud on the line, and he's managing partner over at Investment Arc. Ujwal, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Well, great to have you on the show. Definitely got a lot to cover here and definitely want to get into some of the work that you're doing over at Investment Arc and also maybe talk about some of your past successes. I understand you had an exit with a motive base. So I guess just to get us kicked off here, let's get into your background as an entrepreneur. Where did all that start for you?
I started because I had an obsession for cultural anthropology, the study of human beings and human belief systems. But I did not have a degree, typically a PhD, to be able to work in that field. And so I thought to myself, how do I get myself a job in this field? Oh, I have to start my own company. That's literally how it began.
What? That's awesome.
And so I became a first-time entrepreneur, and because I didn't have any funds, I started as a consultant. And actually, this is something that I talk to so many founders these days, and everybody is obsessed with wanting to raise VC money, and nobody wants to do the grind. And I keep telling them, it was incredibly powerful for me to just be a consultant for the first 3 years because I was so deeply embedded in the customer's problem that when I actually then had the funds and could self-fund development for the technology and build a SaaS product eventually, I knew exactly what problem to solve, exactly which niche to focus on. I never had a problem with product market fit, and I was able to very quickly scale it up. So, but anyway, we'll get into more of that, but that's kind of how it all began.
And take me a step further in this. I guess there's going to be a lot of takeaways here in terms of also what entrepreneurs can get from this in terms of why they wouldn't fail if it's not sales or marketing. Go further into this. Take me further in the story.
Yeah, the problem with a lot of the playbooks out there is that they're all focused on logic. For me as an anthropologist, I understand that 95% of human decision-making, maybe even more, there's so much research to prove this, is all emotional. What we call emotional, it's psychological. It's based on our own beliefs and value systems. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you're raising money for your new startup. You walk into a room. Just the way you walk in, the first 30 seconds of the words you speak, the way you're dressed. We know all of this as human beings, right? What you look like, they all, sometimes negatively and positively, impact the person's perception of you. And usually in the first 2 minutes, maybe max 3, the investors already decided whether they want to give a crap about what you have to say and whether they're interested in investing in you. And the problem with this whole idea of logical playbooks out there is, worry about your total addressable market size and, figure out how you can build this incredible curve showing your growth trajectory and all of this stuff. It's all logic and it doesn't influence the decision. So my entire thesis, my entire focus, even the way I built my company was all to ask the question, okay, forget about all the logical stuff. Everybody knows we need to do that. But how do I influence the decision? How do I get inside the minds of the buyer or the investor, the customer, whatever it is? And how do I influence the decision? So everything is really built on that. And the reason I talk about how, a lot of people will say, something's wrong with our marketing. We need to change our sales leader. We need more people pounding the pavement, all of this stuff. And they go through sometimes years raising 2-3 rounds and still struggling to scale past a couple million in ARR. And a lot of these businesses, and I've had firsthand experience, I spend 3 months with them because I have an investment, let's say, and I get involved and I'm like, okay, guys, let's figure this out. I get involved in 3 months and everything changes because all I'm helping them do is basically make the invisible visible, right? What are those invisible rules that you don't, in the back of your head, you know them already. You just haven't put pen to paper and you haven't figured out and shaped your strategy around it.
Can you give some examples of what maybe these invisible rules could look like?
Yeah, a great example is, every industry has different ones. So a great example is my last startup was in the market research industry. So people expected me, because it was an anthropology-related startup, people expected me to have a PhD degree. I didn't have one. Immediately that impacts credibility. Another one was people expected me to have worked at a large CPG like Procter & Gamble, General Mills. I didn't have that experience. That automatically set me back. Another great example is large corporations, when you're selling to them, they don't like hearing about stories of human beings. They want to know the numbers. 32% of millennials like the color blue. They don't like to know why millennials like the color blue. They don't want to know that. And so every industry has these invisible rules. And the problem is, if you don't understand them, then what you're going to do is go through the logical framework and you're just going to get a no after no after no. So let me give you an example of how you can circumvent it. Now that you know this is the rule, I would start by saying, hey, one of the reasons why we're so powerful with what we're doing is because we don't have a PhD. So we bring all this academic rigor without being bogged down by academic process. We do research in weeks, not years, and then you get a chuckle out of the client and suddenly they're in, right? Or I might say the whole reason you should work with us is because none of us has ever worked in a CPG company and we never will. And this is what you need. You all need an injection of new energy. All of you guys are, wasting 6 months pontificating over an idea when we can solve the problem for you in 6 weeks, right? So the whole idea behind it is once you know what those invisible rules are and you make them visible, then you shape your entire strategy, your marketing, your sales, your customer experience, even your product, to solve those emotional problems. And the moment you do that, everything changes. Product market fit, the way the customer reacts, your close ratio improves, everything improves.
Yeah, I can see that. And so with this new knowledge, and obviously it's not new knowledge, you had an exit you're now helping with, and I do want to talk a bit about that, about what you're doing over at Investment Arc. And now you're obviously helping other entrepreneurs and other startups. But if you were to have to go back and, start from scratch today, what are some of the things you would do to get it kicked off? What's one of the things where would you start?
It's a great question. I think the first thing I would do is spend just the first month figuring out what are the invisible rules in my industry. So every industry, for example, let's take a random B2B industry like cybersecurity. So you might say, okay, how do I figure out what these invisible rules are? It's very simple. Go to the 2 most popular conferences and I would go to the most popular sessions, sessions that are jam-packed. So that tells you that the speaker is already well known in this industry. They represent what you would consider the status quo, and listen to, even record the audio of their sessions and listen to cues about what they're saying. And then after 2 days or 3 days of attending these conferences, you'll find some common patterns that reveal all the assumptions that people make in the industry, right? So if there's a bias towards, a certain type of data set, if there's a bias towards a certain type of process, these are all biases that all exist. All you have to do is spend 2 or 3 days in an industry conference and boom, you'll walk away with all this rich knowledge. And then you sit down with either, your co-founders or, with your favorite ChatGPT or your favorite AI prompt, and you just iron out what those rules are. And now if I had to start a business again, that's the first thing I would do, because it helps me understand what is actually in front of me, right? The real barriers. I'm not talking about the financial barriers and the logical barriers. What are the real emotional barriers ahead of me? For example, if I find that, okay, I'm a cybersecurity firm and there's this inherent bias towards certain kind of cybersecurity technology and I don't have it, then I know that I'm basically going against the industry grain, and I have to figure out how to either circumvent it, right, navigate around it, or I have to figure out how to build something that will fit that mold, right? An advisor of mine had given me this great piece of advice. He said, every industry is a Lego structure, and you have to figure out how to mold your idea into a Lego block that fits seamlessly into that structure. If you try to break the structure, the industry will chew you and spit you out in a second. And it's very true. That's exactly why. That's the first thing I would do. Once I've mapped those invisible rules and shaped my plans accordingly, then I would begin by I wouldn't go raise money. I would begin by doing consulting work. Spend 6 months actually selling, because when you sell, you get real market feedback. You can very quickly tweak what you're saying. You'll understand what language resonates, what language doesn't, what turned people off, what got them excited. And then you'll end up, signing 1 or 2 small contracts. You'll get embedded into the customer's reality and understand the workflow. It's only then that you start to think about actually building technology. So after that, you can go raise money, or you can, self-fund like we did. It doesn't matter. But I'll tell you, and I help through my alma mater, for example, I help a lot of entrepreneurs who are, for example, trying to raise VC money. and I tell them about leverage, they don't understand that if you've already gone, let's say, and done some consulting and actually have a proven set of results to show that you understand the problem. You haven't built the tech yet, yes, but you understand the problem, and here's literally proof of how you solved it. Even if you solved it manually, it gives you so much more leverage in that conversation with a VC, in that conversation with an angel investor, whatever it is. And I think that those are the first two steps I would do before really jumping into building anything, because if you do that, A, you reduce the risk. You're not going to lose all your life savings and make stupid decisions, because I've seen so many people do that. But B, you'll also learn how hard it is to satisfy customers, right? Like it's very easy to raise 2-3 rounds and sit in your build cave and keep building tech and not generate any revenue, right? It's kind of like, I use this analogy of, I read this story of some guy on Reddit who could never get a girlfriend, and he joined this society of pickup artists to learn how to, pick up women at bars, and then started getting tons of phone numbers, but he would never go on dates because he was afraid that if he went on a date, the hard work would begin. He'd have to show his true self, and he'd be vulnerable, and he'd actually have to keep a relationship. And so it's kind of like that, right? Like you just sit in your build cave and you're building stuff without actually doing the grunt work of satisfying a customer and getting negative feedback and figuring out how to deal with it and all of that.
This is great. And I like about this is it seems very efficient. Like if you're going through these steps, if you're going through this logic and this process, you can save a lot of time, because some of the mistakes that you're mentioning cost people years and a lot of pain. A lot of pain and years of work. And I'm sure, and actually I want to switch it up here and spend a little bit of time with what we have left here. Tell us about Investment Arc and the work that you're doing there and how you're helping founders and businesses.
Investment Arc is just my family office, and I really focus on investing in founders that kind of are in a similar situation to where my business partner and I were, where perhaps, they're outsiders, they haven't done this before, first-time entrepreneurs, they need help, they're open to getting help, and they're open to taking this kind of capital-efficient methodology.
Yeah.
And if they're open to that, then we get involved, both, in terms of providing some injection of capital, but also in terms of guidance and resources. And we actually get involved. So I would consider ourselves more of a angel investment network than a VC, the traditional VC. But we do like to really get our hands dirty, because I think my whole mantra is right now, if you look at the entrepreneurship landscape, you've got like the top 0.1% turning into unicorns. Good for them. Then you've got maybe another 0.5% doing really well like we did, like selling your business for a very high 8-figure sum, bootstrapped. It's rare. And then you've got 99% who are basically struggling. They either go out of business, worse case, some people lose all their life savings, right? It's a pretty dismal story. And to me, if I can focus on that 99% and get that down to 80% and, that remaining, 10, 20% of folks that want to build slowly in a capital efficient manner, we're not trying to build unicorns. We're trying to build businesses that they can sell for 10 million, 50 million, 80 million, and still have a life-changing impact, or build businesses that are just sustainable and resilient. That's our entire focus.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I'll tell you, this has been great. I learned a lot from this episode. I'm sure my audience did as well. That being said, if somebody's looking to connect, follow your work, follow any content that you put out, how do they do that?
I think first and foremost, I just want to mention I've written a book called Invisible Rules. It comes out in March, so we've got some time, but I just finished the manuscript. And it's basically covering this methodology with the goal of just helping entrepreneurs, especially first-time entrepreneurs or people who are just perhaps struggling or feeling like they're stuck, get out of that mindset. And you can certainly sign up for
March 2026. Just want everybody to know we're recording this in 2025, so that's coming up early next year. Yes.
That's right, early next year. And if you go to invisible-rules.com, you can get all the information you need. You can even get yourself a copy of Chapter 1 if you're interested. And I'm always open to feedback too. And a lot of folks have been very generous. And then on my website, you'll also find links to my LinkedIn, my Instagram, where I share, 60-second videos, tips, tools, as well as my newsletter, where I've got thousands of entrepreneurs who are just following me for more in-depth advice like this. And I should mention, I'm not one of those people that's turning this into some kind of a paid program. I have zero interest in selling any of this other than perhaps my book. I'm genuinely doing this because it gives me a great sense of purpose. So please do follow me.
That's wonderful, and you'll have to circle back with the show when the book goes live. We love supporting authors around here because we know that is not an easy thing to finish a project like that. So first off, for all my listeners, just so you know, we'll definitely put some links in the show notes that will allow you to go to the website and all that other good stuff so that you can connect and stay up to date on when this book comes out. And speaking of the audience, if this is your first time with Mission Matters and you haven't done it yet, hit that subscribe or follow button. This is a daily show. Each and every day we're bringing you new content, new ideas, and hopefully new inspiration to help you along the way on your journey as well. So again, hit that subscribe or follow button. And Ujwal, thanks again for coming on the show. It's really been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Adam.